But I mean, to your point, just to follow up a little bit.
Yeah.
So even this kind of black pool of assets that I'm talking about, that within that pool, there is asset sales and income generated. And the asset sales are not taxed, and the income generated, let's say on a bond, for example, is also not taxed. So that's what I'm saying. When you have a tax evasion complete in that pool, and that's estimated, last I saw, roughly $25 trillion is just captured and managed by those four big accounting firms. Nothing's ever taxed in there. Once something goes in there, it's gone forever. No government ever sees it. And people can draw on it, however, and they can go through, we've covered this before, the band U2 would use the Irish or Dutch sandwich, which is like you're taxed in one territory and then you're moving it to a separate territory. And then the income from the royalties on their music never seems to get taxed. And there's Bono.
But until we hear from Keiser, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, so we will provide daily content to keep you updated on the latest news. Tim Maxwell Max Keiser, an American broadcaster and filmmaker, was born on January 23, 1960. He was the host of the Keiser Report, an RT financial program that emphasized unconventional economic views. Keiser served as the host of Press TV's news and commentary program On the Edge from November 2012 to the present. He served as the host of BBC Radio 5 Live's New Year's Eve program, The Keiser's Business Guide to 2010. 3. On BBC World News, Keiser hosted an episode of The Oracle with Max Keiser. On the Al-Jazeera English network, he both produced and participated in the TV show People and Power.
Exactly. But I mean, to your point, just to follow up a little bit.
Yeah.
So even this kind of black pool of assets that I'm talking about, that within that pool, there is asset sales and income generated, and the asset sales are not taxed, and the income generated, let's say on a bond, for example, is also not taxed. So that's what I'm saying. When you have a tax evasion complete in that pool, and that's estimated, last I saw, roughly $25 trillion is just captured and managed by those four big accounting firms. Nothing's ever taxed in there. Once something goes in there, it's gone forever. No government ever sees it. And people can draw on it, however, and they can go through, we've covered this before, the band U2 would use the Irish or Dutch sandwich, which is like you're taxed in one territory and then you're moving it to a separate territory. And then the income from the royalties on their music never seems to get taxed. And there's Bono at the Davos talking about how equitable everybody should be treated in the world. His band, they haven't paid tax in 50 years. So Davos, once again, every year it's the same, kind of script, the same thing. It just gets more outlandish. The disproportionate between, as we've said for a while, it's gone from quintillionaires and it's gone from super rich and it's gone from the Gini coefficient, that's measuring the wealth gap in different countries. And we see, for example, France usually had a lower Gini coefficient than maybe the United States, for example. But we're so far off the charts in terms of even Gini coefficient. We are now in a period, you've got to call it neo-feudalism, where 99.9% of the global wealth is controlled by a few thousand people. And that's no longer akin to any economic system other than feudalism. No, I mean, just to put this into context, again, this is a story that we've been reported on many times over the past 20 years. They give the average Joe $1 and they take, and I'm so old, I remember when it used to be they take $100,000.
Yeah.
And then every few years that number gets bumped up. Now we're at 1.7 million.
Yeah.
And the feudalistic nightmare that's unfolding is one where you literally have a society that's developed. I mean, people just have to look at the images on the street. It's depressing to kind of describe exactly what's going on, but people are aware of what's going on. I'm a New Yorker. I know New York very well, and New York is a town that has an enormous pride in itself as the best city in the world, the greatest city in the world. And there's a lot of money in New York. There's a lot of billionaires in New York. The media of the world is focused in New York. 9/11 had a profoundly negative impact on the United States, in that you saw in the media capital of the world a staged terrorist attack where not only one building was taken down, but then when all the media was focused on that one building going down, the second building went down. I think at that moment, the people in New York who are uber wealthy and around the world as well took that as an indication that, you know what, we need to start pulling our cash out of the system completely. No more philanthropy projects, no more good guy, no more Mr. Nice Guy. We need to start pulling our money out. And we saw liquidity dry up, and we saw the response from the Federal Reserve Bank was to lower rates and inject lots of cash. And a lot of that had to do with those with a lot of resources were pulling it out and putting in that offshore kind of black pool of capital. And I think we're still kind of in that period where the people who have, you know, the oligarchs and the robber barons from the 1920s, you know, a lot of them went on to build libraries or they built social programs. You know, they felt an obligation to give back in a huge institutional way, build universities, build schools. We don't really see that anymore. You know, I'm open to be debated on this point because I think that those with those resources are really just hightailing it out of town. They're like, we want to get out of here. As we've talked about also, is that initially it wasn't necessarily perceived completely in a negative light because although wages started to go down and the high-paying manufacturing jobs disappeared, the prices of stuff that was manufactured in China and then shipped over and appeared in Walmart, like flat-screen TVs, clothes, and other items, went down precipitously. So even though your income went down, the price of stuff went down more. So your quality of life wasn't necessarily perceived to be degraded. However, what we've seen now in the last couple of years is the flip side of that. Now you've got inflation, not deflation, and your income is not keeping up. And now you've got a loss of standard of living. Dynamic in the country where you had the heartland was kind of portrayed as not understanding how important it was for the U.S. to participate globally in this way, and was associated more with, let's say, right-wing politics. And you saw that completely flip. And this is the period we're living in now. It flipped totally in 2016 when Trump became president. And then what's been shocking is the reveal that the left is actually the most out of control of any of them. More on the conservative side, like a Ross Perot was very vocal in saying, you know, don't ship all your jobs. You know, if you ship your manufacturing
giant
overseas,
sucking sound.
The giant sucking sound, right? And so, but the left and the liberals who control Hollywood and the media would belittle him and make him look foolish, and they attacked him and he pulled out of his race for president. But they had a great hand in controlling the culture in a lot of ways because the coolest people, the movie stars, were associated with, you know, the Democrats. And but in 2016, okay, the tables were flipped. Trump really took the media and grabbed it by the, you know, I'm not going to fill in the beep. And so then we saw in the left when the veneer falls down and they're not really the lovey-dovey, soft, fuzzy, you know, culturally minded New Yorker magazine reading, innocents that they portray themselves to be. They're really vicious, authoritarian. So authoritarianism lives with the Democrats. That's where it lives and breathes. And now that's been exposed. And that's what I think the biggest reveal of the past few years. Totalitarianism, which we haven't yet seen, but we have a kind of an indication. So the reveals of the Twitter files certainly give us an insight into what these folks are thinking about. That absolute 360-degree control over every piece of material that enters the public domain is reviewed, censored, edited, transformed, and that is beyond just censorship. It is dystopian. They've created a dystopian environment where the words coming out of your mouth are morphed in mid-sentence into different words. And then you're portrayed as having said that, and then somebody else who reacts to it is actually a robot who's talking to another bot who's writing a story about you and why you said that in real time against you, and now they're mobs after you for something that was transformed in mid-sentence that you never said. This type of really control of technology in the media that we're seeing unfold now, in deep fakes and things like this, are where you know, it's hard to imagine exactly where it's going, but you see it taking shape. I mean, this word of plundering, you know, is you see it throughout society. So you see people going into convenience stores and walking out with hundreds of dollars worth of stuff,
Yeah.
and they don't pay for it, and nobody's chasing them. They're plundering. Then you see the political classes plundering. And it gets back to that 9/11 reference, which is like the beginning of a plundering era, where the people said, you know what, I'm not even going to hide the fact that I'm really moving stuff around and I'm not paying taxes, but I've sponsored a camp for blind children, and I'm a good person. They're just saying, you know what, I'm just going to plunder. And that is just permeated throughout every strata, right? From the bottom, from the person who's, going into CVS drugstore and ripping off a bottle of aspirin, to, a political operative in Washington, D.C., who might be a senator who's trading on inside information.
Do you agree that price doesn't matter in the short term? Leave a comment if you found the content interesting. Click in like button. It really helps the channel find viewers similar to you. If you're new to the channel or haven't subscribed to it, click in subscribe button. We post content daily to keep you up to date on the current market and news. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.